Bienvenidos a LTX Live. Bienvenidos. We're gonna start the energy. Come on. If you are just joining us, welcome to LTX Live. Come on. Here we go. Welcome, welcome. If you're joining us, say hi on the chat. Bienvenidos a todos. Let us know what city you're repping from. What city? What city? Come on. We got San Antonio, we got New York, we got Oakland, okay. Welcome to LTX Live. Come on. We want to get the energy flowing. Who's ready for today? Come on.
Me pasó por el lado, pero no la vi. Le dicen la mala, mala malorí. Yo no sé si es de Bello o es de Itagüí. Dicen la mala, mala malorí. Yo no sé si es de Blar. Trabaja en Vigo, cobra por PayPal. Le gusta la liendra, le gusta el chacal. La vida es buena, no me echen la sal. Capo con zorra y en el capitán. Y me la robé, contra la pared, me la robé, contra la pared,
Baby, ya yo me enteré, se nota cuando me ve. Ahí donde no has llegado, sabes que yo te llevaré. Y dime qué quieres.
Oh, we got Argentina in the building, Buenos Aires, Brooklyn, Huntington Beach. Latinos, rep your country right now. Rep your country in the chat.
Estás bien suelta, yo de safari. Tú me ves lo fenomenal. Pa' yo devorarte como animal. Si no te yo te voy a esperar. En mi cama y lo voy a celebrar.
Baby, a ti no me pongo. Y siempre
rep your country, come on. Venezuela, México.
Vamos a nadar el hondo.
¿Quién más?
Si por mí te lo pongo. De septiembre hasta agosto. A mí sin lo que digan tu amiga. Ya yo me enteré. Se nota cuando me
Puerto Rico, ok.
Ahí donde no has llegado, sabes que yo te llevaré. Dime qué quieres beber. Es que tú eres mi bebé. Y de nosotros, ¿quién va a hablar? Si no, no te vamos
Bolivia in the building, okay. Trinidad.
No me dice nada.
Where my Latinos that like old school reggaeton. Welcome to LTX Live. El Salvador in the building.
La vista tú la descontrolas, moviendo como tú no hay otra. Mi corazón se me explota, detrás de al baile sola. La vista tú la descontrolas, moviendo como tú no hay otra. Mi corazón se me explota. Unos tragos se embriagaron, nos perdimos, olvidamos.
Who else? Who else? Come on.
Unos tragos se embriagaron, nos perdimos, olvidamos y nunca más nos encontramos.
Besándonos toca lo más que te gusta. Busca pa' que tú te luzca. Me gusta como tú te la apuntas. Hoy seré tuyo y sin pregunta. Hoy volvemos a sentir como lo nuestro se junta. Música que siga música. Vacila, tequila, tranquila. Bebe más gente. Más beba, más te entregas y te pega pa' sentirlo más. Oh.
No me dicen nada. ¿Qué pasa? Que ya no te veo. No te veo. No me dicen nada. ¿Qué pasa? Que ya no te veo.
We're just warming up. Come on.
Se acabó la cuarentena, el cuerpo lo sabe y la calle está
Let's pick up the energy. Come on,
Se
LTX.
acabó la cuarentena, el cuerpo lo pide, la calle está llena.
Here we go. Come on.
Hasta mañana calle, mi cuerpo lo pide porque dure mucho trancado en mi casa. Hoy ya te empeño pa' comprar bebida y pa' amanecer por ahí con una mala. Si tú ten eso, cae más atrás que el after party allá en Punta Cana con pile de popi. Hasta mañana bailando pilita con la mente mala. Y es que hasta mañana, hasta mañana, hasta mañana.
Once again, welcome. Bienvenidos, Latinos. LTX Live.
acabó la cuarentena.
We're just getting the energy going. Who's ready for today?
Se acabó la cuarentena, el cuerpo lo pide, la calle está llena.
Por eso mi cuerpo pide hasta mañana, hasta mañana, hasta mañana, calle, hasta mañana, hasta mañana, hasta mañana, calle.
Hace calor y quiero playa, coger una nota, pasarme la raya. Un bebecito que quiera batalla. La reina habla y los peces callan. Hoy se bebe, hoy se fuma, hoy se bebe, hoy se fuma.
Bienvenidos.
Y beber, y beber, y beber, y beber.
How we feeling, Latinos? Let me know in the chat how we feeling.
Prender, y prender, y prender, y prender, y beber, y beber, y beber.
Pero una asesina matando la liga, los gigantes y pequeños.
We're gonna get started in a few minutes.
Carro con de que nos vayan a ver en el Merced. Ella quiere playa, quiere bote, quiere tuerquear y que el rebote. Y más por la noche ponerse el escote, para que ese cuerpito se le note. Hoy se bebe, hoy se fuma, hoy se bebe, hoy se fuma, hoy se y beber, 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 y prender, y prender, y prender, y prender, y beber, y beber, y beber.
DJ Moonrock, let's get it, baby.
Come on, y'all know this one.
Rumba, sí, ella quiere su rumba. ¿Cómo? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Who's excited? Who's excited?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Come on.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I know you want me. You know I want ya. I know you want me. You know I want ya. I know you want me. You know I want ya. I know you want me. You know I want ya. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rumba, sí, ella quiere su rumba. ¿Cómo? Rumba, sí, ella quiere su rumba. ¿Cómo? Si es verdad que tú eres guapa, yo te
I see we got Miami in the building. San Antonio. What other cities is joining us tonight? Come on. Chicago. It's a fiesta, it's a fiesta. Come on, LTX. We got Bay Area in the building too. Okay. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. We wanted to get that energy flowing. We wanted to make sure you guys were awake. This is LTX Live. Welcome to LTX Live. Here we go.
Yo no sabía que tú eras así. Te juro que ahora me cae mejor. Me contaron muchas cosas de ti, pero eres más igual que yo. Es de hacer, no es de hablar.
Who's ready? Who's ready for LTX Live? Dímelo, Latino, dímelo.
Yeah. Salió de Rosa al Pobla. Ey, ey, estaba perdida y ahora anda en todos lados. Ey, ey, uno prendido y el otro está enrolado. Ey, ey, hoy es el día por si no me han probado.
Yeah, 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 ey. Vi que te dejaste a tu novio, baby, me alegro. Vamos a celebrarlo en perro negro. Dile a ese que tú no quieres arreglo. Dile a tu pai que quiero que sea mi suegro. Mami tiene el party prendido. Saca tu cibeto y sorprendido. Me dijo que la amiguita está para el trío.
This is LTX Live. Thank you for joining us.
We want
to make sure we had the energy going to get y'all ready. We're going to get ready to kick off this event.
Okay, clap it up for Moon Rock. This is my jam for the record.
No me importa cuál es la hora ni cuál es tu signo. Si el DJ fuera pastor, nos casábamos aquí mismo.
Lily, how we feeling? Lily, how we feeling?
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's give it up for DJ Moon Rock, the official LTX Connect DJ since 2020. So let's give it up. If you love that, jams, give some love in the chat. Give it up, give it up. And I'm excited to welcome you all, especially being able to reconnect. I haven't seen some of you in so long, so just really, really, really nice to reconnect and also meet new folks that are here. My name is Lily Gangas. I'm the co-founder for LTX Connect, which is a platform elevating our comunidad, our Latinx communities at the intersection of culture, innovation, inclusion, and opportunity. And we want to do this through partnerships, through programs like today. We want to do this through also technology. And I'm also the Chief Technology Community Officer of the Caper Center, where we focus all in really providing an opportunity for us to succeed and own and be able to drive forward technology in an inclusive manner. And did you know that LTX Connect is also a 2 Emmy NorCal winner? If you didn't, now you know, because we've been celebrating your story. So we want to continue to create these platforms. And today is super special because this really kicks off our first LTX Live webinar, all focused on artificial intelligence and our community. So to get us started, I'm going to share a few different stats. And what the goal for today is really, we want to have you all, regardless of where you're at your level of understanding of AI, you're curious, maybe you're new to this, that's all good. This is a session for us to start and learn together. And we're going to share resources. So we're going to look at today's day in 3 main ways. We're going to envision, we're going to understand, and then we're going to look to apply. And so with that said, we want to make sure that we have a set of amazing speakers and experts that are here for you. So if you have questions, we want to keep this super dynamic, put it into the chat, put it into the Q&A, we'll be monitoring. So with that said, y'all officially ready to get started? Got to see it in the chat. Got to see the energy. Let's do this. I'm looking. Let's see. We got some love. All right. Keep dropping it. Thank you, Leah. Yes. All right. Now we could officially get started. And as you probably have heard, a lot of these great stats, right? The talk about the Latinx being one of the fastest growing. We have a 3.2 trillion GDP. However, we're also one of the youngest cohorts. Did you know that, especially in the Latinx community, that 58% of the current population is under 34 years old, with 31%, a third, under 17. So we have such a range of stories, but also such great opportunity. And also, we are one of the ones that we love sharing our stories. We love being on social media. We are one of the largest creators and consumers of a lot of what we see online, whether that's on Instagram, on Netflix, YouTube, TikTok. If anything, we've been seeing some of that stats show us how we're 1 in every 5 TikTok users are Latina. 56% of users on YouTube are Latina, right? So there's a lot. And when we think about Snapchat and Instagram and all the different tools that are coming, we want to crave, we want to be together. But we also want to make sure that we're just not the consumers. So today, and what we do here at LTX Connect is to make you learn how to be also the creators, how to be the owners, and how to be the investors. And unfortunately, we have a long way to go, but this is why we're here in community. I'll tee up some data from the Caper Center that's going to be coming out in January 24. But at the current pace that we're at of the representation of the Latina creators and technology, it would take till the year 2077 for us to reach parity. So I wanted to stick with you all, because if we keep doing the way things have been going as they are at that pace, we're not going to be able to even, and for many of us in our generation, be able to fulfill those innovation potential that we know we have, right? But when we think about the youth and the next generation, we owe it to ourselves and our communities and the generations to come to change this up. And this is why we're here. So we're going to be doing things and learning together, because in the backdrop of all of this that's happening, we know that AI has already been very pervasive in a lot of different sectors. It's expected to bring 15.7 trillion of growth, right? But when we think about us as Latina, how are our stories being considered? How's our data? Do we have, data that looks at the diversity within our communities? So there's a lot of work ahead, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And it's super critical that you're here, because we need you to be part of developing these technologies, applying it, but also making sure that it's done in a responsible way. And in order for us to do that, we're all going to continue to learn, right? So if you've taken some AI class, put it into the chat. If you're curious, let us know how you feel about the current state of AI. But to help us think about also the opportunities, the challenges, but we also need to be able to have a time and space to envision what it could be. So this is why I'm super excited to bring our official keynote speaker. We have Joanna Peña-Beckley. She is the CEO of Vibes AI, a design technologist, and she is really ¿cómo se dice? La madrina, no, Joanna, of cognitive experience design and a pioneer in AI. And she's going to be able to tell us not only what are those moonshots, but what are we should be anticipating. So with that said, let's give her some love. Let's give it some love on the chat. Who's excited for Joanna? Joanna, when you're ready.
Hola a todos mis amigos, mis amigas. How are you? I'm Joanna Peña-Bickley. I saw some people in here from San Antonio, Texas. I was born and raised in San Antonio, so welcome, welcome. It's such a gift to have you here. Went to school in Chicago, and now I call New York City my home. And so I couldn't be more excited today to share something I think is really, really important. See, one of the things Lily talked about that I think is super important is that we reimagine all aspects of our lives right now, because artificial intelligence is actually, and has been actually, working in all aspects of our lives, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not. And I think one of the biggest societal challenges and opportunities for our community is that we understand where we are today, right? And where we need to go tomorrow. But in order for us to understand where we are today, we need to know the history of AI. And to really understand that history, one of the things I wanted to share with everybody today is that history. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some moonshots. And those moonshots are really critical, because when you see them, you're going to see that there are going to be, within the next 1 to 3 years, new classes of job opportunities. One of the things you're hearing a lot today is that some of those job opportunities and old classes of kind of the white collar workforce have begun to disappear. And we certainly are seeing that. But as that is happening, we are also seeing an explosion of new opportunities and job classes that I'll touch on today. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Say hello to Leah. Welcome, welcome, everybody from San Antonio, everybody from Miami. This is a beautiful gathering of all of us here today. So let me share my screen here. So let's just start out with a history. And, you know, I like to start out in a place of really believing that if we are to understand where we want to go, we need to understand where we came from. And we have to root that in the idea that AI, right? When we think about AI, we always think immediately STEM, right? Oh, it's just the science, the technology, the engineering, mathematicians that are going to have the jobs in the future. And the answer to that is absolutely not. I like to think about this in a kind of very large spectrum of all the job classes that are they're actually coming in steamed in the most, I'd say in the quickest iteration of that. And that's science, technology, engineering, the arts, math, and design. But we're also seeing a rapid expansion of all the skills that we need. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So when we think about it, from a history lesson, right? The first half of the 20th century, science fiction familiarized the world with the concept of artificial intelligence. And I think this is a really important thing. Just because AI is having a hot girl summer does not mean that it just began today. The work actually started in about, right, if you think about it, some of the AI concepts came out of science fiction. And that was everything from the robotics of Metropolis, or even the Heartless Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. It's exactly that kind of fiction, right, that was used as a muse to inventors like Alan Turing. And Alan Turing was a young British polymath who explored the mathematical possibility of AI. And Turing suggested that humans could use available information as well as in order to solve problems, but to reason and make decisions. And so he asked a really seminal question, which was, why can't machines do the same thing? And this was a logical framework that actually then got put into a paper in 1950. And computing and machinery really started to codify around two different scientists. Kind of, if you look at what Alan Turing did from about 49 to 50 to Alan Newell, Cliff Shaw, and Herbert Simon's logic theorists. These are really important pieces of research that actually began to think a little bit about how we as humans, right, could create machines that could help us think, right? That would have the same human problem solving abilities. And so just to be clear, Cliff Shaw, Herman Simon, they worked for the Rand Corporation. And it was essentially one of the things that they did working with Dartmouth researchers, which began to really study how the human brain worked. When Lily introduced me, she talked about me being the mother of cognitive experience design. And in my work with IBM Watson and my many years at Alexa, one of the things that was really cognified is that the idea behind artificial intelligence is actually a cognitive, right? It has the connection to, one time it was called cognitive computing. So how we use it to create AI products today is actually called cognitive experience design. So if you think a little bit about that history, that gets us to about 1956. In 1964, AI started to flourish. Computers could store more information. It became faster and cheaper and more accessible. And machine learning algorithms also improved the way that people got to know different, very specific different of areas of our government. And so early demonstrations such as this is, as you can see, ELIZA, which was Joseph Weisbaum's kind of first bot. And this is 64 to 66. And then what we started to see is these successes then led leading researchers to convince the government that DARPA, so the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, to fund AI research at several institutions. What's really funny is that we're actually in that seminal moment again. 64, here we are in 2023, something very similar has just happened. And the reality is that government was particularly interested in how a machine could transcribe and translate spoken language, particularly for intelligence reasons. And how you do so with a high throughput of data processing. And so there was significant optimism that was high, and there were high expectations, and I think even higher than we had now. And then it really took until about 1970 when what you had was folks like what you're seeing here is Arthur C. Clarke, who was both a science fiction writer, but also a futurist, began to build things at the different world's fairs and demonstrated how these machines could use natural language processing and abstract thinking and self-recognition, and how it could be achieved, and then how it would actually impact our societies. I think one of the most important things that we can do is maybe not always just listen to the engineers and the researchers, but listen to the futurists, who at that time, Arthur C. Clarke was actually giving us a siren's call of, here was what has the potential, right? But more importantly, for those of you who are familiar with AI sci-fi, Arthur C. Clarke is actually the writer of 2001, which was Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey, which was a pretty dystopian movie about how we might get to singularity. So if we kind of fast forward from the 70s, we hit a dormant cycle. In the AI world, what we call that is an AI winter. I called it kind of like, for those of us, the women in the AI community, it was an AI menopause. It was really a very big lull, because it took until about the 1980s for AI to get reignited. And it was two sources of really big thinking. The first one was actually a piece that was done around deep learning, and that was published by John Hopfield and David Rumelhart, and it was essentially popularized what we hear as deep learning techniques, which allowed computers to learn using a computer experience. The other one I think was really important is that you saw the expansion of kind of a fifth generation of AI systems in these big computers. You see 82 to 90, right? Was the Japanese actually creating a fifth generation of a computer project that really was revolutionizing things like computer processing, using logic programming and improvising, like kind of improving the artificial intelligence of its time. But unfortunately, some of the most ambitious goals were never met. And one could argue that there were kind of indirect effects of when it was really just government driven versus actual private sector companies. That being said, at about 1997, if you go from about 1990 to 1997, one of the things that happens is Garry Kasparov was defeated by IBM's Deep Blue. And, at the time, Kasparov was like the world chess champion, reigning chess champion. And what was, I think, really interesting there is that you could see it not just make decisions, but actually be able to do scenario playing in a way that really outthought the human at this point. And so we began to ask a question then said 97, if it could do that, what else might it do? And so as we get to, in 97, I think an important part of what's going on at the same time AI is happening, speech recognition software is actually developed by Dragon Systems, and it's actually implemented in Windows for the first time. And so when you start to think about all of the different components in which today we probably don't necessarily understand how these things came together to bring us to this moment. But that was another entirely great step forward in the direction of spoken language and interpretation of the endeavors of AI. And it seemed like there wasn't a problem that machines could handle. Even when we think about it from the human emotion, it was kind of fair game. And one of the things that you're seeing here is that Kismet, which was a robot that was developed by Cynthia Bushnell, and essentially Kismet was designed to recognize human emotions. And so that was something, a first of its kind. Cynthia's at the MIT Media Lab. One of her first company was called Jibo, this phenomenal robot, right? That actually begins to recognize, not just behave like a human, but recognize human behavior. So that gets us to a little bit closer in the history. And if we look at it from 2014 to 2016, right, you had the part of going from Deep Blue, right, to IBM Watson. And as you look at that, that was really the entry to the marketplace of IBM Watson truly becoming an enterprise tool, and the private sector truly getting training on what it was possible to do. And you saw things, one of the things that was really excited that we could work on was things like being able to solve problems in cancer, but also being able to think about self-driving cars in ways that we hadn't thought about. And then we had a really interesting thing here is that about November 6, 2014, my little friend was brought to market. Her name was Alexa, and that was the consumerization of artificial intelligence. So you brought AI and things like natural language processing and that voice recognition coming together into a product that would be in your homes. And then after that, one of the things that Google does in this kind of space race of artificial intelligence between 17 and 18, they publish a paper that has become the seminal paper. You've probably heard the word transformers, right? And this seminal paper that introduces the world to transformers is actually published by Google. And that takes us today, right, to a place where ChatGPT, right, has 100 million users, and it certainly has a lot of conflama. Let's be very clear as a company, because one of the things that we are experiencing today is not only is it a new technology, right? Not only does it require a tremendous amount of information to create these foundational models, but what it also does, right? It has ChatGPT essentially democratized the way that we engage up until the point that, if you thought about it, voice was one way, but you generally had to know how to code to get AI to work for you. And what ChatGPT has enabled is a real democratic way of bringing text to, which is the vast majority of AI today is really text to. Now, I think one of the key parts of this that's kind of running alongside of this history is Moore's Law, right? Which Moore's Law is all about what estimates the memory and speed of computers to double every year. And so it really wasn't until 14 that, we really felt like Moore's Law had caught up to so many of the use cases that really surpassed the abilities of the past. So if you think about it, all during those 1950s and 60s and 70s, we simply didn't have the compute power to apply to the imagination that what was possible. Today we have that. And I would even say with the announcement yesterday of IBM's Quantum 2 computer, we have more ability to actually make enormous breakthroughs in ways that we have never seen before. And I think it's really important that we think about it from this perspective. Yes, AI had a hot girl summer this past summer. And when it comes to investment, particularly amongst our community, I want us to remember that there's a lot of headlines about investment drying up. That has not been necessarily the case when it comes to AI startups. And so this is still one of the hottest sectors in which the investment community is putting money into. And so now is the time for us not to just be the consumers of AI services, but the creators of the next generation of companies, the next generation of enterprises, the next generation of leaders, right? I was thinking the next tech innovators. The most exciting thing to me is two Latinas in a basement and the ganas and willingness to actually discover how AI can bring their community, bring our community new innovations that make our lives a little bit easier. But I think before we kind of get into all of that, right? So we've talked about the history of AI, but what is it really? What is it really? Today, artificial intelligence, we look at here, is actually made up by several, right, kinds of technologies. AI, right? If you think about it, artificial intelligence is kind of an umbrella term that encompasses natural language processing and generation. That's producing text from a computer data, right? Speech recognition, virtual agents, machine learning platforms, AI optimized hardware and chipsets, decision management softwares, deep learning platforms, biometrics, robotic process automation. And it isn't just the automation of it, but it is the generative automation of it, text analytics. So if we look at it, it's my years, in the early days of Alexa, we were utilizing things like text analytics and natural language processing that supports text analytics by facilitating the understanding of a sentence structure, meaning and the sentiment and the intent, and then it would go to a statistical machine learning method. So this is kind of the broad array when we say artificial intelligence, yes, coined in the 1950s, but it now refers to the simulation of human intelligence by machines. And these are just a few of the technologies that are available to us. But when we think about why all of the heat and all of us have been, just incredibly excited around AI, right? It is understanding that we've really taken a deep dive into machine learning. And there were three, as we talked about in the history, kind of three seminal technologies that have come together to create what you're hearing all about in news. And I think what's kind of picked up on the zeitgeist of major media that kind of truly missed the boat on all of the things that came before it that took us to this point. I find it funny when it is major media feels there's a technology that actually puts them at risk, that they begin to cover it. And so we have this thing called generative AI. And so if you take a look at those, there's a family of technologies. So like the variational autoencoders, the generative adversarial networks, you hear them as GANs, that has a lot to do with things like deepfakes and transformers. Right? Transformers, all of those coming together equals generative AI. And so generative AI or generative artificial intelligence is a form of machine learning, and it's able to produce things like text and video and images and code and just about anything. One of the most exciting things, I find in my work today is that generative is actually taking us to a place that is solving problems of our society that it hasn't solved before. I will tell you, it is creating problems at a faster rate as well. But that is for why we are here today to discuss the importance of your involvement in it. Because here's what I'm here to tell you. You do not need to be a scientist, a technologist, an engineer, an artist, or a designer to be involved with AI today. Anybody should be able to have some kind of artificial intelligence, AI literacy. And so much of the work that I do at the Design Corps is bringing, right, these technologies as open bed test platforms for entrepreneurs of any sector to start to create with, because at this point, everything is text to. So as long as you can text to, the vast majority, I will tell you, is in English. And I know we'll have another speaker that will talk about how we need to focus in on. There are generative AI systems that do Spanish, that have Hebrew, that also have representative things like Chinese and Japanese. We are very quickly, right, beginning to make sure that we can text to all of the languages. But as of today, the majority language is actually English. And there was once a time when the majority language was actually just a syntax for code or Python. So we've made some strides. We have a lot more to go. But you as an entrepreneur can be able to text a generative system to help you get started. And that's one of the most exciting things to me that is happening in this space. One of the other things that I think is super important is to understand that the market has begun to organize itself, right? Companies are shaping kind of 3 macro layers of the generative AI landscape. If we look at it from this perspective, the bottom layer, right, is where we build everything. It's our compute layer. And that is essentially things like our semiconductors, the chips, Amazon, NVIDIA, Intel, right? Those are core. Then the second layer to that is our foundational models. All of that data, right, getting codified into foundational models, the LLMs, the data models, right? Again, Amazon is playing in this space, Cohere, Stability AI, Google Bard, Hugging Face, and my company, Vibes AI. And then we also have the application layer. And this is the one that actually the vast majority of the consumers actually engage with. So you have interfaces like Alexa, you have Siri, you have Vibes AI, you have ChatGPT, you have Jasper, you have Writer AI, and you have things like Midjourney. So if you look at the landscape, the marketplace has begun to organize in this, we in the tech community used to call it the stack, into the stack. Well, the stack starting with the computer and chip layer, those foundational models, right? These are the things that make it easy to have a conversation with an AI, to simply just text to get something done. And so if we think about it that way, then that takes us to the moonshots that I talked about. Let's remember that AI is a force multiplier of technological progress because its enabler of other technologies empowers the evolution of business and government and frankly, our society. And so what you're seeing here is that you know, everything from our health and wellness is being impacted to our government and defense. If you look at this, and I think this is the most important thing that I will say this, the criticality of our Latinx, our Latin and our Latino community becoming engaged in artificial intelligence is so critical because within the next 1 to 3 years, the difference between the haves and the have-nots are going to be the people who have AI technical literacy and the people who do not. And so I couldn't be more, I think there are days where I go through when I'm getting to work with high school teachers through the Design Corps and high schoolers to bring them the necessary skill sets like prompt engineering. So important on how you text a computer, right? That text to is taking us to an important skill set around prompt engineering. And it's going to be in prompt engineering is going to enable these moonshots, things like protein folding in health and wellness, AI to speed up scientific discovery. Like if we thought that 2 years was a long time to find a vaccine for COVID, I want you to think about it today. AI is being applied in the other areas of vaccine and things like diabetes and weight loss, which is very exciting. AI first drug development is already happening. AI is essentially going to be focusing on improving patient outcomes. And I think one of the things that the hype cycle has done is actually created fear, because when you don't know about a technology, we fear where it comes from. And there's, I think, a lot of both institutional reasons for that, but even within our own community, there's a tremendous amount of what we don't know, we fear. And the importance of knowledge and fearing in here, if we want to be a healthier community, we need to understand that AI is going to play an enormous role, and that our data in those AI models is critical. Is that if we get left out, our community will generally suffer tremendously. That being said, it is being applied to finance, insurance, safety, our everyday safety, everything from AI generators of copyright infringement, of targeting vulnerable populations, of AI alignment, synthesizing and generating trust, school surveillance, worker surveillance, and then the idea that we have to prioritize trust. And I think this is the other one, government and defense. Right? At a time when we think about what is going on in the world, the other thing that's going on in the world is, we have an infodemic. A part of that infodemic is we're seeing a rise of AI nationalism. And that AI nationalism is kind of, if we think about it, it's very much in a space race to who can actually utilize the data models and produce data models, and how much the country is investing. Today, if we are to kind of think about all of the countries that are investing, the two biggest players are China and the United States. And right now, China is actually out investing the United States by about 3%. And so I think it's really critical that if we are going to play a role, we need to understand that there's significant things that we need to do from a government and a policy perspective. And the last thing I'll talk about is finance and insurance, because this impacts our everyday lives. It's everything from mitigating fraud to financial risk, to improving damage assessments. There's a tremendous amount of consumer-facing robo-advisors that are coming online, and everything from AI claims to liability insurance for AI. And this is an important one, right? Is because when you ask yourself in a self-driving car, who, if it has a wreck, who do I sue? Is it the person who was in the other car, or is it the AI manufacturer who actually wrote the software? These are all critical questions that we are going about within the community today of really answering. So with that being said, I want to be mindful of our time. I hope that was a breadth of both the history, right? Where we are today and what's to come, the moonshots. And the moonshots that we need you, our Latin community to actually come to the forefront and begin to take part in this.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Let's give it up to Joanna. This is just, I just wanted the folks who are in the chat and are here. This is a Latina, our people for our people by our people, and we want to continue to do that. And also as a Latina, it's just really, it's my honor, Joanna, to be in community with you. And I know that there's a lot of great work that we also want to support Joanna. So we dropped in the link to her website. Let's also give the love to Joanna by supporting all the work that she's doing. And we hope, Joanna, to have you back. So with that,
you will always have me. And just a very quick aside, one of the most important things, and you and I have talked about it at drinks, at concerts, right, is the criticality of we need you here. Yes, representation. And I always find, look, my path and journey through this is because I had an amazing Latina as a mom who, worked her I'm going to say worked her ass off in San Antonio, Texas to build a company so that I could go get educated and do these things. I sit in a place of privilege and I know that. But now it is so critical, right? For those of us who have whatever privilege we have to bring our entire community in right now, because the decisions about our healthcare, our finance, about our government, and how we get represented in the decisions around our healthcare is so critical. So please go and follow Vibes AI. That's our company. And consider joining the Design Corps. The Design Corps comes into communities during crisis times, and we bring technology training and skills training to local communities, no matter what skill sets they have today. We come in with the necessary frameworks for free, gratis, right? Into your community, into your, whether it's your church, your school, your charter school, and really make a core impact on the people who are early hand raisers, who want to come in and they want to be an early AI pioneer. We will give them the tools and the funding necessary, right, in the form of grants to actually go and do these experiments. So I love you, Lily, my sister, mi amiga.
Hermana, muchas gracias, Joanna. Thank you so much. And that's exactly, we're doing this all in action. This is why it's LTX live, not pre-recorded, live. This is our conversations we're having. So on that note, we're going to move to our second segment. So as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to start with the envisioning for you to all understand what is the opportunities, the possibilities, right? And then now we're going to move into the understanding and the application. So we are excited to have Mutali Nkande, who's an artificial intelligence policy expert and the founding CEO of AI for the People, a nonprofit creative agency that seeks to use journalism, television, music, film, culture to really challenge the narratives around what is assumed to be social neutrality in the machine learning technologies, right? She's also the founder of Beyond Bias Consulting, a management consulting agency that is working with a lot of different companies and nonprofits to make sure that we're also doing this right. So with that said, let's give some love to Mutali. We're gonna start to think about what are the emerging careers, right? So you saw the moonshots, you saw the trends, the need for you all to be here. And if there's somebody who didn't join us today, we'll make sure that make sure you share this information with them. It'll be pre-recorded, it's being recorded, so we'll share it out after, so then that way we can continue. Each of you that is here, now you're a light for your communities, for your family, so we can continue to raise the AI literacy and foundations with our community. So with that said, let's jump right in. Mutali, let's give some Mutali some love.
Thank you.
Yes, Mutali, welcome to LTX
here
Live.
I'm setting my stopwatch so that we can get to the conversation part. So very quickly, my name is Mutali Nkande. I'm going to try and take about 12 to 15 minutes to speak about natural language processing, yes, but to really speak about how can all the amazing information that Joanna has just shared with us be applied to a career today? Because if we're thinking about middle-class careers within the knowledge economy, which is what's happened with not just the explosion of ChatGPT, but how much the tech industry is impacting our lives, I think it's helpful to see what do people actually do in those companies. So if you could start sharing my slides, that would be very helpful. So I'm going to do this. Oh, do I have to share them? Let me see. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to do this by looking at a sector within the tech sector, I've said that twice, called trust and safety. So once we get them up, I'm actually going to start going through the slides before they're up, just because of time. But when we think about trust and safety, every single company that we have in the market, whether it is Alexa, as Joanna has come from, whether it is YouTube, whether it is Google, have a department that sets the rules of the road. And it's that setting of the rules of the road that really impact our experience as users. If you could go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do really quickly is let you know what my path was in, because this session is really about from where I am now today, wherever I sit, how could I possibly take part in this industry if I'm not going to start a company, if I'm not going to start, I'm not going to start a company, I'm not going to raise money, I'm a W-2 person, I want my money every 2 weeks and I want it to be good money. Then we're going to go into responsible AI. So where I've built my career over the last 15 years is in this subsect of the AI industry, where we look at how can we do this ethically? How can we do this without harming people? And then apply that to the product design process. I'm going to do a couple of different spotlights in terms of careers. I'm going to offer you some frameworks, because my specialty is the development of anti-racist AI systems. So those are AI systems that can recognize dark skin, that don't discriminate against non-English names like mine and many of you. We had my colleague after me is Carlos, definitely would be discriminated against within a hiring algorithm potentially. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? How can you create your path? And then a call to action, if we can go to the next slide. So my path started with Black Girls Code. I turned up at a hackathon in 2011 in Brooklyn, New York, where I live, and I met the founder, and I gave out paperwork. The parents had to sign it, and in giving out paperwork, I ended up falling into conversation with many of the engineers who were at Google at the time. I come from a media and communications background. I was in television for a long time. They liked me. They knew people were looking for communicators, went back to Black Girls Code, and then they talked to me about wanting to come to Google New York, ended up going there, stayed there for a while, ended up being hired by Google. All that to say, all I did was show up. All I did was volunteer. All I did was take space. And it has completely changed the life of my family. If you could click again. From Google, ended up, while I was there, one of the people that I interfaced with was Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. This is really way back, like probably 2010, 2011. And she was asking a lot of questions about diversity in tech. Why were there so few Black women? Why were there so few Latinas? I'm coming to this conversation as a member of the African diaspora, but I'm really speaking to anybody in the chat whose skin is not considered white and therefore gets discriminated against based on color, because that's a real thing. I know this isn't the same Zoom. In both our communities, the lighter you are, the more that you the more that you look white, the better you are, the more opportunities you get. The darker you are, not so much. It's actually the same within the workforce, and you see this particularly in tech companies. If you could click again. That relationship with Congresswoman Clarke did two things. I now was an insider with the Congressional Black Caucus because they would all come to me. They would all speak to me about tech, but I now knew what the legislative priorities were. And think about that. I knew what the legislative priorities were 2013, 2014. Ended up leaving Google. We can speak about that later. I don't want to take up too much time. But when I left, I went into research, because one of the things that I learned working in a tech company is that R&D, research and development, is the engine of the company. And the way to create wealth and the way to create a career for myself outside of big tech was going to be based on my ideas. So wrote this paper back in 2019. It got published, but started writing it before with my mentor, sociologist Jesse Daniels, and Direction Mur, who is a computer scientist at Bucknell University. If you could click again. So then, using research, one of the things that we did was develop a series of questions and checklists for engineers to figure out how and when their products that they were creating would express racial bias. This, many years later, this is actually this year, got me named one of the top 10 women in AI by NASDAQ. And the reason that they recognized us is that they were looking at the advisory work that we were doing behind the scenes to help responsible AI teams who have been in companies a very long time. They just haven't had main stage create better projects. If you could click again. Google is a customer, click again. TikTok is a customer, click again. And I've been doing large scale policy work for many years and just did an insight panel. So that's a really, really quick way to show you how you can go from an idea, getting it, holding on, creating relationships, right? My relationships got me to Google. Understanding that if we as non-white people are going to impact this space, we need to start creating our own knowledge. And then that's put me in a very powerful position now. So if you could go to the next slide. Where I've done most of my work, as I said, was a responsible AI. This woman in the middle with the light colored jacket is Jamila Smith Lord. She is a lawyer and she's the head of Google Responsible AI. The reason that I'm pointing out that she is a lawyer and she's the head of that is that this talk is for all my arts majors, all my sociologists, my political scientists, my philosophers, all of these people that decided math was not for them, they did not love math and math did not love them, you can still be leaders in the tech industries, but particularly around responsible AI. And the gentleman next to me, I have the microphone in my hand in this picture, he's actually developing a voice assistant system for Google that will recognize African-American vernacular. And as Joanna was saying before, and I'm going to speak about natural language processing more, but when we look at natural language processing, it only really recognizes well people that have mid-Atlantic accents and would be typically racialized as white. And what the responsible AI team are doing is that they're bringing researchers, they're bringing engineers, they're bringing humanities, people like me, into multidisciplinary teams. And we are launching this at Howard University. And this was actually at the beginning of Congressional Black Caucus. So as you can see, within responsible AI teams, if you are multidisciplinary and if you're putting race equity at the base, as we do, you can come up with these great product interventions. What we don't have is our Latinx brothers and sisters telling us what they're paying, Blind and Works brothers, sisters, and others, I want to be completely inclusive, telling us what the pain points are so that we can bring you all in, because we are very ready, willing, and able. If you could go to the next slide. That job that I've just described, that coming in and figuring out how to create an inclusive product, is because the company wants to scale. It is not because the company is anti-racist. It is not because the company loves us. It's because the company understands business. And that is part of what is typically a trust and safety protocol. So trust and safety do three things in terms of the experience of a technology for the consumer. They let the consumer know what to expect, which we would call dignity in this slide. I've taken this from TikTok. They're one of the companies I work with. It also balances consumer experience and safety with business. So we still want to be able to make money. And then the third part is fairness. How are we creating a product that's fair? And the reason that we're creating products that are fair is as regulation comes, we know that customer expectations are going to be, they're going to want to shop and use applications that they feel are not harming them. And there's an incredible amount of fear. So in a trust and safety team, you're going to have people that will play that role for the company. If you could go to the next slide. One of the things that we look at in the social media space is usually the way pictures, images, and text travel across geographies. So I was in a trust and safety summit earlier this summer, and this picture was brought up by the content moderation team. And they simply asked us, should this picture be uploaded online? The people that were coming from liberal democracies, the people that were coming from open free societies said, yeah, of course it should be uploaded online. It is just a woman in a tank top taking a shower. For whatever reason, she's uploaded it. But our colleagues from the MENA regions, which are North America and much of the Arab world, said no. Many of our colleagues from sub-Saharan Africa said no. Many of our colleagues from Catholic countries within Latin America said no, because there were different cultural norms. That is where the trust and safety team became enacted. We had to decide what policies should we follow, the policy teams and trust and safety, what policy should we develop to make the platform fair for people, right? Where should they be enforced? How should they be enforced? What happens if this picture is uploaded in France and it's shared with a friend in the Arab Emirates? Do we allow it to go through do we allow it to cross that border? And then what engineering do we need to create that seamless global experience? The people that sat on that team came from every single discipline, including photography, because we were having real conversations about, should we pixelate? Should we not pixelate? Should we remove? What could happen to the woman? Could she be killed if she were identified? Could she be? These are the types of jobs that are within the AI space, Because what we're doing isn't designing AI systems, we are mediating AI systems and making sure that they work well in society. And we need everybody to be part of that conversation. If you could go to the next slide. So what are the economies of responsible AI? Why is this a thing? Why have I been able to feed my family? You see this big tree in my living room. I was able to, buy this tree with the spoils of my responsible AI work. If you could click first. What they do, responsible AI teams, is that we report directly to General Counsel. Why that is important is that it shows us how pivotal this particular function is to every single company. And you do not need a computing degree to be in one of the most important roles within the company. They all hate us too, because we're always telling engineers that they can't moonshot because the moonshot is illegal, but that's a different Zoom. If you could click again. The other thing that they do is that they get paid really well. So I went onto Glassdoor yesterday and figured out what would it mean for somebody that has 3 or 4, a bachelor's degree, 3 or 4 areas of professional experience. And in a trust and safety setting, they actually often want you to come from outside of tech because you're coming in with new eyes. And if you were in New York City, where I live, that was about an average of $169,000. That means that you could probably live anywhere in the city. You wouldn't be bawling, like you're not, don't go crazy. You're not Oprah, but you're also not going to feel marginal. And you're going to be able to support yourself and a small family. The reason that I say that was I also looked at average median household income for Latinx families before I came onto this Zoom. And compared to 269,000 of white families, Latinx families have a median household income of 56,000. Then in New York, the median salary is 60,000. So coming in at 169,000 and making sure people have those pathways is an economic justice issue that I think all people of color should be aligned on. If you could click again. The reason that we need you is that there is a lack of criticality within the AI product development space. And what I mean by that is we are not thinking about, nor do we know, nor do we care, nor are we close to the pain points that are specifically Latinx. And if you could click again. And one of those major pain points is a lack of research into natural language processing outside of the English canon. Joanna did actually in her talk say that there were plugins that we could use, but in the teams I was working on, and I'm working in the biggest companies in the world, those plugins were not being used. So it's one thing to actually have the technology and have it open sourced. It's another thing to even have a team that are aware of that. If we could go to the next slide. I'm coming up on time, so I'm going to rush a little bit, but you can ask me more questions. My big value add is around racial literacy. And so I do 3 really simple things. I'm going to go real fast. We tell companies that tech companies are not safe nor viable unless they are anti-racist. And what we then layer upon that is anti-sexist, unless they're accessible, and other things, because we want the company to scale. We want you to be the biggest company on earth, right? The other thing that we say is that this is really emotional, not just for white people, but non-white people, because we're taking an incredible professional risk when we're doing this. But if we are really, really interested in helping a company scale and getting to the next generation of unicorns, we need to get over our emotionality and we need to start making money. You have to be able to make that business case. And then the action plan for me being here and being in community with all of you, because I hope that this isn't the last time we're in community, is developing a workforce that can execute against that agenda. And it is my belief that increasing Latinx participation in the AI workforce should be a national priority, because as Lily said, they are a young population. That means they are going to be able to pay our social security benefits, they're going to be able to drive our economies, and they're going to be able to create the next companies, products, and workers that we need. Next slide. Very quickly, this is the last one, I'm over time. What you need to do, learn about the responsible AI field, reach out to me, ask me questions. If you could click again. the LTX community needs to really identify and know key non-technical roles within the AI space that we can plug people in today. And then my final thing I'm going to say to you is to develop strategic relationships, develop them with me. I am not Latinx, but the truth of it is I could be from Honduras. I could be from Puerto Rico. I could be from the Dominican Republic. You didn't know that when I switched on. There are Latin people that look like me that face the same problems. And if you are not a white presenting Latin person, you may not look like me, but we face the same problems. We are in the same struggle. And I am in complete solidarity with you because I want to bring you into this field as quickly as we can and make sure that you all can be part of the AI revolution. Thank you.
Mutale, that was amazing. I just want to say thank you so much. And honestly, with the way you were closing it around the solidarity that we need to have in our community for Black and Brown is so critical, especially as we're seeing how fast this, especially some of the questions that were there, how fast the technology is being created and a lot of these systemic racism and the way the data is also impacts our community safety, but also the opportunity to dream. So I just want to say thank you so much to that. And there is a question. I don't know if you have a little bit of time, but I did want to.
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect.
I didn't want to go too long though. I'm sorry, folks. I didn't want to bore you.
This is excellent. No, I mean, we're looking at it into the chat and folks are really engaged. So the first question I wanted to bring up is from Karina Bustos. Data quality and quantity are often cited as challenges in AI implementation. So part of those biased data. How can organizations overcome these challenges to ensure that their AI initiatives yield accurate and more meaningful insights and are inclusive of the data when it's coming from marginalized groups such as Black and Brown, LGBTQ, women, Womenx, trans community, right? When we have all the different identities as well. Where can they access more equitable data sources?
Okay, so I actually am very controversial around this. I am sick of the bad data conversation. The data is bad, it's historic, we have bad history. What we can do is optimize differently. So when we're creating product, as Lily knows, I'm a product person. I'm coming to this from let's get stuff out. We can weight our inputs differently. So instead of waiting for, and you see this in financial models, a very famous one for mortgages, where they were, one of the biggest weights was, did this person search for other mortgages before they came to this? And if they did, they were more likely to be accepted than if they didn't. That's a proxy for race. And the reason that's a proxy for race is that I am an immigrant. I am from Zambia. My parents would have been so scared to get a mortgage when they bought their first house that they would just take the first one. We don't even come from a country where you can shop for mortgages. And because they would have taken the first one, we would have been denied by an AI system. When you have a multidisciplinary team, you actually have engineers and designers and researchers and others that can say, it shouldn't be that way. This is the way that we manipulate the data. The other thing that I'll say is the way the data is interpreted is cultural. Having high rates of people going to jail in my zip code doesn't tell me that I need more police there as a Black person. What it tells me is that there is racist policing and we need to look otherwise. So when you have data can be your friend. We needed to develop AI. We need people that are looking at that data more critically. You are those people, and you don't need to be an engineer. You can actually be in the product team and providing that. You can be a subject, what do they call them? A domain level expert. I have a whole career as a domain level expert. And so that's what I would say. And that gets us off bad data, because what are we going to do about history? Nothing. We can only change the future, not the past.
We can only change the future, not the past. And to know what type of future we want to build, we also have to understand where we came from, right? So then that way we can also have that in mind and reimagine, right? That's what the theme for today is, reimagine.
So I think Joanna did such a good job at really honing down on that, like reimagine. Don't build things that hurt Black people. How about that? Don't build things that hurt Latinx people. How about that?
Definitely. So we'll, I'm checking the chat. Any other questions? Drop it in now.
I wanted on Tali's.
Yes, coming in.
Sorry. So just one thing. For those of you that are interested in building data models, because I think that's an important one. Yes, it is an excuse of the past. That doesn't mean that excuse can go forward. So one of the things that there are methodologies, what we call the 95% percentage methodology of when we are doing research and developing new AI models. And I'm really keen on it. You see it in healthcare. It's something our company does, which is making sure that you have 95% of the global populations. That means you go look at the ethnicities, right? First you ask yourself, who is this AI for? And then you make sure that all the represented ethnicities and minority groups, right? Every sub-minority group is represented in that data. And so one of the key critical things to that, right, is then it's not just having a diverse team, as Tali and I talked about kind of before this, it's actually making sure that when those team and the researchers are gathering that data and creating those foundational models, right, that we are utilizing the data from our communities. But I think one of the most critical things that has been with all the AI hype, it's actually created fear in our own Latino community. And so gathering data, one of the things we've got to be able to do is ensure that we're building trust in our community so that when you give us that data, we're not selling it to foreign governments. There's a lot of policy that needs to be done there, but particularly in the areas of healthcare, if we want to have a representative healthcare system that treats things like diabetes, weight problems, heart conditions, without that input of the data, we will continue to have bad outputs and we will only be doing after the fact.
The only thing I would say about that is that I agree and I don't agree. I actually do not trust that I mean, it's a difference. I do not trust that 95% methodology. It's the best that we have, but it's not good enough, which is why we need regulation as well. We need an outside body. We cannot have industry coming in and saying this is representative. And I have been fighting with the people at Microsoft for a very long time about this.
Absolutely. So, but to that point, we cannot not utilize, let us not sacrifice what is possible for and again, coming out of the product space, we need to make the incremental, right? We need to get policy. We know what it's going to take to get our government to move, right?
I'm not going to take up too much of Carlos's time, but I
agree.
I don't want to take all of Carlos's time, but I don't want to put that as the only thing on the table because it's not good enough. We shouldn't accept it. And if we don't push, that's all that we're going to have. But I do agree there is stuff out there. It just cannot be left to industry to decide, is my view.
So on that note, I just want to say thank you so much. And this is why it's LTX Live, because there's a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of different conversations. This is exactly how we're shaping this future. So I just want to make sure we give a lot of love to Mutali. Give it into the chat. I know folks are interested in learning more, so we'll continue these sessions as well. And then now, thank you, and thank you also, Joanna, for jumping in and being able to connect some of those dots. And then now, so you've seen 2/3, right? So we've gone from the envisioning to understanding, but also understanding the nuances of what does also responsible AI look like? What is our community, especially, right, when we're thinking about how these systems under the hood are being built? What can we do? It's gonna take a lot of public, private sector, as was shared. But then what happens when you, as an individual, want to know, so what do I do? How can I actually get, be part of this revolution, whether you're across different backgrounds, as we just heard, right, from Atali and Joanna. So how do you upskill yourself in this new AI era is where we're going to transition with Carlos Vasquez, who is joining us. Hello, Carlos. And Carlos Vasquez is the CEO of GoSprout, which is the first which is a registered apprenticeship management tool. I'll let you do the better intro, but the part I wanted to highlight is that Carlos is also the first Latinx who has a registered AI apprenticeship in the nation, and he has over 20 years of experience in the EdTech space, and he's one of the leading voices in computer science and advocacy for our communities. So a lot of stuff there to gem on. So Carlos, welcome to LTX Live.
Ooh, it's great to be here. Some amazing conversations happening. I'm just sitting back, listening, very powerful stuff. And I'm glad that you, you know, have created this space to intentionally discuss, first of all, not leaving anyone behind. Second of all, you know, strategies for ensuring that we are tactical about our approach. You know, there's a lot of talk, but how do we match the talk and walk the walk? And so hearing from some of my fellow panelists and as to what they're doing, and what you're doing, of course, inspires me, motivates me. So I'm fired up.
We're fired up with it, definitely. So with Carlos, let's start with that. Let's start with in this conversations, it's a little bit more fireside chat, and I know that you also have some information you want to share. But let's start about your experience of like how you got into this space, and then also tell us a little bit more about what you recently launched, right? The AI apprenticeships.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I grew up in New York. I grew up in the Bronx. You know, it was a single parent household. My mom was very young, and she entrusted a lot to the school district for me, right? In terms of learning, it was very like, okay, go, eyes closed. They know what's best for you, right? And so a lot of my learning was influenced by teachers and people who, you know, not necessarily from my community, not from my neighborhood in the sense of like formal learning, but wanted to help me break down some of the glass ceilings, right, that were preventing people from my community from advancing. And so I always felt that I would end up in social impact. You know, I kind of blindly followed education and, you know, went to college, got a CS degree, got into some debt, you know, thinking that it was the pathway. And then ultimately, when it was time, when I graduated from Fordham in New York City, I couldn't find a computer science job. I didn't have the network, which we know that now a lot of the ways that we see folks get jobs are tied to network, family network, right? And so I didn't have a lot of time. I had rent due, and so I ended up working in sales actually for a few years. Worked in sales, was able to develop what I learned at Fordham and CS is a lot of theory. But I got a chance to do some practice because my general manager at the time pretty much served as a mentor to me. And so there were a lot of like fundamental building blocks in my development that I feel aligned with what happens with a registered apprenticeship program. And so, you know, I never imagined that I would, you know, I'm such a, you know, forward thinking workforce innovator, and to be focused on one of the oldest training models like in the history of mankind of people, which is the apprenticeship model, was pretty crazy. But as I got into the apprenticeship space, I started to realize why so many people were not you know, aware of what a registered apprenticeship program is. So I typically give a little 101 on what a registered apprenticeship program is. So a registered apprenticeship program is employer-led in the sense that an employer has a need in terms of their talent pipeline. They identify the competencies for that role. They submit the competencies and the training, the supplemental training, to their training representative for a region. In the US, we have, it's pretty much split. We have an Office of Apprenticeship where states run their own, and then we have Department of Labor done by regions. So anyhow, you submit these competencies, they say yes. It takes about 3 to 4 months to get approved. And so we just launched our first registered apprenticeship program in AI and in UX UI. So two occupations that we feel obviously have a lot of momentum, but lack a lot of representation. So our organization submitted for approval, and we got our program approved just a few weeks ago.
And Carlos, on that, let's give some love to that, because for the folks who know that have been in the space, we know how challenging it is, right? And it's great to see you, Carlos, be able to really bring that, as you said, from not just the talking, but the doing and the action. And I know I'm going to share the slides that you shared with us, how we folks get a little bit better sense. And for the folks who may be new to apprenticeships, feel free to drop in questions in the chat. But Carlos, feel free to just, as you were sharing, you know, we can go into some of the components, and then tell us a little bit more about like the skills in AI specifically. What are people supposed to be building? What skills should we be building ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think So a registered apprenticeship program, I've been in the workforce space a long time. I've worked at some of the larger nonprofits. I've also worked as an adjunct professor in City College San Francisco, Miami-Dade College, and so I've been in higher ed for a while. And the apprenticeship model, the first thing that I feel is where it flips the traditional education framework is that it's a job first. So an apprenticeship is getting an employer to say, we're going to hire you, and this earn to learn model, or you're earning while you're learning, the government has set aside what's called learning loss incentives. So when an apprentice starts, there are reimbursements and tax incentives available to support the employer as they invest in this talent through a registered apprenticeship program. Your core components, you're showing the core components right here. The first thing is that a registered apprenticeship program has to be between 1 year and 6 years. Typically, it's about 1 or 2 years, unless you go more into the trades or you want to get deeper into higher competency levels. But your OJT is first. Your related training is your supplemental learning. So while you are working full-time, you're also most likely enrolled at a post-secondary institution. And so there's that supplemental piece, right? So while you're working, your employer is giving you an opportunity to work side by side with a mentor. Typically, it's like a subject matter expert or someone. In our case, they would be working with our senior developer as they navigate some of the big AI opportunities that we see for us, that my senior developer is like, basically like, hey, I need some help. So if you think about it, the apprentice is working side by side with this mentor, and the apprentice is incentivized because for every competency or every time metric met, they get an increase in pay. So that's really important, because what you have with adult learners need to be motivated extrinsically. They need to make sure that what they learn is connected and is part of their own personal growth. Unlike what it is to be a kid and just kind of follow in a textbook and look at the clouds, right? We as adults need that type of experience. So at the end, they finish with a credential. And 94% of apprentices who complete the program actually stay on with the employer. If you can imagine, you have a loyal employee, someone who's grateful for the opportunity, someone who just got, invested in terms of like their time. And so it's a model that unfortunately is very complex, has a lot of layers, but I feel is the most effective for helping immerse, especially as we think about underrepresented populations, into jobs. Boot camps, I've worked at several boot camps. I've seen that boot camps unfortunately perpetuate a lot of the divide, in the sense that how many people can actually take off 12 to 15 weeks and afford $15,000 for a full-time program. And so this kind of, it is a, boot camps are an option, but I feel like an apprenticeship is a more general approach to ensuring more equitable hiring practices.
On that note, I saw some in the chat. There were, where are these programs available? Are they in Texas? Are they in different areas? I know we have folks joining us across the US today. And then
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about how these programs and some of the work that you've been doing in Puerto Rico, especially.
Yeah, so, I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican. It's been an amazing experience to go back to the island now and be part of a brain trust focused on workforce. Puerto Rico has experienced a lot, in terms of natural disasters. Also, Puerto Ricans who want to go to post-secondary don't have access to a lot of the same grants and federal funding that we get here in the mainland. So they have to be really creative about how they tap into opportunities. And so there are some big employers who have been incentivized to come to the island. And there we're working with Universidad Politécnica de Puerto Rico, Polytechnic University. We have Luis Olivares, who's the director of apprenticeship there, and he's phenomenal. I'm so fortunate to be working with him. We're helping them create some training competencies, and the platform that I created called Go Sprout. What we're doing is making it easier to launch and manage the program. So as I was researching the apprenticeship world, I said to myself, wow, if only there was a platform to help people, get this off the ground. And of course, I stayed up that night, and the next day I started working on it. And so we launched that platform. We have some community partners already, and some big employers. But, you know, I'm just a huge advocate for apprenticeship programs because it makes the employer, you know, what more could they want, right? They're getting a loyal employee, they're getting wage reimbursement, they're getting tax incentives. So it's time for them to, you know, it's not a risk, it's an investment. The platform is GoSprout.app. We could put that in the chat. So to the point around finding opportunities, we've actually curated a lot of those opportunities on the platform. So if you are with an agency, you can send people who are interested. They can log on as a prospect. And our goal is to basically be a bridge and connect potential apprentices who we call prospects to employers. So you can visit the app and find it.
Great. And I think I have some folks who have a few questions. Before we take some few questions, I wanted to, if you can just share a little bit, Carlos, especially when we think about the model, right, that you're describing. Apprenticeships are like the OG models, right? We've seen
right.
Historical. It's actually, to your point, it's probably one of the most inclusive ways of doing it because of, as you shared, the learning, the being able to earn and be able to get a job, right, as you're doing. And technology and the sectors are moving so fast, it feels like there's a really great opportunity to bring some of these models, but also bring it back to our community. So if you can share a little bit more of like under the hood, right? Because we're all LTX, this is an exclusive for everyone, okay? Because this is fresh. So tell us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I became, I'm already an obsessive learner, and this was one of the bigger challenges I had. Like at this stage in my career, trying to wrap my head around a whole new workforce model. I thought I had it figured out with internships, but so if you look here, what you're seeing are the two main components of an apprenticeship program. OJ, there's a lot of acronyms in this world too, by the way. OJT, which stands for on-the-job training. And that has to be, like I mentioned, at least a year. So in this case, it's 2,000 hours. And the second one is the related training. And so related training at this is going to be 200 hours. So the bullets that we had as we thought about, and look, today's panelists both did a great job breaking down like what the careers look like, the history of AI, the fact that you have it, the ability to use AI tools, right, as like a consumer. But I know the big push is like, well, how do we get folks to become creators, right, and leverage AI? So this particular apprenticeship, that of AI or machine learning developer, the competencies are really, I want to say the fundamental competency is around data science, right? Because when you look at data and you have tons of data, if you're a big corporation and you have all of this data and you export into a CSV and you need to navigate and go through that data and figure out what model makes sense for you. Because at the end of the day, before you even look at data and think about what AI model you're going to implement, you have to understand your business. You have to understand, you know, what are the current revenue streams? What new revenue streams can exist by leveraging AI? Sure, you can use AI to automate your social posting, to create, you know, ChatGPT and help cut down the time that it takes to create contracts, agreements, whatever that might be. But what about, you know, tapping into data on the predictive side? You know, if you're a company 10 years, you know, you are a $5 million company or more, you have all this data because you have all of these customers or people in your database. There's more revenue streams in there. And so we need a trained person to kind of work side by side with the business team. So those are the other skills that they're learning, the analytical skills. And then finally, on the more technical side, like what Python, right? So thinking about how do you use programming languages to ensure data integrity, because you want to go through your data and clean the data and everything that comes along with that world. So this apprenticeship is very well-rounded, you know, from foundation. And I think, I believe it was Joanna that kind of showed those layers. That's a good example of what we're having our apprentices do. The key thing for us, in order to grow our program, we need to add more employers. So right now, this deck, I pulled out the slides that I use when I meet with employers, because 95% of employers we meet are like, wait, what's an apprenticeship? They think it's an internship. And so I do a lot of, you know, re-educating and saying, no, it's not an internship. It's actually, you can't get any more different. But that's a lot of what I do day to day is pitching employers on like building an apprenticeship program, because I think that's a great way to level the playing field.
Definitely, especially in like looking at the chat, folks are really engaged as well because they're wondering like, how do we get this in Texas? Like, is it open to everyone? And
Yeah.
so, and also like the employer side, right? So for the folks who are joining us, if you are part of a company that is looking to do this, like this is the moment. This is also why we wanted to host this and share these resources with you all, because I know that some of you are in different roles within your own company, but we're all in thinking about how, and also looking at the strategies, the business decisions that are already being made, have been made, but there's future wants to shape, right? So if you are somebody who is interested, drop it into the chat. This is the reason why we wanted to bring Carlos here, because this is also about like the tactical, tangible right now. So Carlos, on that end, what are some of the areas that you're excited about as we think about the role of the AI apprenticeships, the cities you're looking to build with, the types of companies you want to build with?
Wow. Like first, I'm getting goosebumps looking at the comments, you know, being a founder like day to day and like constantly thinking about this apprenticeship as a way to disrupt and provide opportunities. You know, it can get lonely, right? You're like in the weeds. And because there's so much educating involved with it, it can really take a toll on you, because it's not like you're just like selling HubSpot, right? Or CRM, right? You're selling something that is a tool, but they first have to realize that they need the tool. So it's an interesting mix of raising awareness. Plus, we're dealing with so many stigmas tied to the apprenticeship world. So a lot of times people think you have to be a union or you have to be a large company, when in fact, the apprenticeship model works so great for small and medium-sized businesses. Because what we're telling employers is to remove the definition of who you think should be here, blank slate, create the program and hire someone who's eager, motivated, passionate, and will help the organization grow. And I think that's where we're getting some buy-in. But to your point, Lily, like the companies we're working with that we have the most success with are those who first believe in the framework. Like say, yes, we believe in apprenticeship. Because look, you're dealing with the DOL, you're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy, you're dealing with paperwork, but if you're patient, the benefits will come, right? And so that's where we are working closely. Like we are fortunate to have an amazing, in Miami-Dade County, our apprenticeship training representative, Lorena, she's wonderful. And she's helped us navigate the world. And so for our program, we want employers who get it. We're also working with universities. I saw someone post about like New York. I'm from New York originally. Like I know New York has prioritized building an apprenticeship, bringing apprenticeships across this New York City. New Jersey just announced $30 million in creating an apprenticeship center. So the funding is there. We need to match now the will and also like educate our people. Like we need to let people know you can do this, and an apprenticeship is a way. You don't have to think about saving up and you know what else I would say? If you are an apprentice, you also there's also a increased likelihood of post-secondary completion, because the related training typically comes with college credits. So it's great for those gappers or those folks who, you know, are looking to do a career change. So yeah, I mean, it's a long-winded way of saying we're looking for ambassadors. We're looking for folks who have influence at the employer level, but also at the university level.
And I love this concept of also, Carlos, for highlighting there's other worlds of technologies besides the big tech companies in this world now, with especially just reflecting on how hard our community was hit with COVID. The one that I'm seeing as well is that folks have adopted to being more digital, focusing more on building the digital equity and advancing some of that infrastructure. So I love the fact that you're bringing in the small, medium-sized businesses across all areas where we can support our community. So it's like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think these models are really powerful. So thank you, Carlos. And we're gonna take a few Q&A if you have additional Q&As. All right, so I'll do 2 more Q&As and then we'll get ready to close. Sounds good? All right, Carlos,
great ones here.
I wanna know what's a range of financial investment for a company to have an apprentice? Is there data around it? So for those employers that want to start something like this, what's the level?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So so beyond just the will, right? Typically an employer, so you know, I know you had the slide. So you have the main stakeholders involved in an apprenticeship program. first and foremost is the employer, then there's the apprentice. The entity responsible for ensuring compliance is called a sponsor or an intermediary. The sponsor traditionally, and I hope I pasted that one out. The sponsor traditionally is a college, because the college is basically saying, hey, we have these students, put them as apprentices, we'll manage, make sure timesheets are done. But an employer can also actually be a sponsor. And I'll use the example of Boston Scientific. So Boston Scientific has close to 100 apprentices in cybersecurity, and they are also serving as the sponsor. So, and the sponsor means, again, that you manage the timesheets, that you ensure payroll, that you make sure that the apprentice is moving up in wage as they're supposed to. So there's a lot of administration behind it, hence why we built GoSprout, because we're advocating for it and we give access to the tool. So the tool right now, we have anything from a freemium plan to the premium plan. So we don't want to let dollars get in the way of helping orgs launch a program. We're willing to spend the time to train, to give access to the platform. So really, if there's already a program in place, you can basically get started right away. So the link I shared to join our program in AI or UX UI, we could get started anywhere in the country. We can add employers from across the country. Now, if you wanted to start it from scratch, it would typically take 6 to 8 months, because there's a lot of review of your competencies, review of like occupational training pieces. And so that's like a lot of back and forth. It took us, about 6 to 8 months to get ours approved.
And is that 6 to 8 months of approve? It's like, how many folks are you engaging with on the back end? So if folks are like, if somebody, for example, if they have, maybe they're a team of 2 or 3 folks within an organization and they're interested in doing this, this is where I guess the GoSprout helps.
Yeah. So you can go to GoSprout, and there are already existing programs in place. Like there's programs across the country. I think there's around 27,000 programs right now in the US, around 600,000 apprentices in total. So if you want to work from an existing program, you can do that. Or if there's an occupation that you feel isn't in your region, that's where we come in and like use the platform to help you create the competencies, create the paperwork. By the time you finish in our platform, you're able to export the very application you need to submit to your local Department of Labor representative.
And so basically leveraging some of these existing structures and then adding out the specific AI literacy foundationals, but also making sure that folks continue to get the skills, right? So I think that's what makes this part dynamic.
We didn't have AI here, and so we saw it as a golden opportunity. We've been doing AI training with the school district now for the past few years. We just had an AI hackathon. I know you joined us and you got to see, close to 500 students in the room. So, a lot of times, unfortunately, schools are at the mercy of like the state kind of approving curriculum, but it doesn't mean that you can't bring opportunities to students, that are like outside of school time, or help teachers find a way to incorporate topics like AI into their already existing curriculum. So we've already been doing that for some time. One of the things that I'm most proud of, like now that we have the registered program in AI, we are working with the school district to create 3 pre-apprenticeship programs. So we're going deeper into the pipeline. So we want to go into high school, even as early as middle school, to try to expose students as young as possible so they can start to cultivate that mindset that by the time they get to college, they'll have, a very deep awareness, although things are changing so fast, but they will have the fundamental components to understand the world of AI.
And I think I loved it. I'm looking at the comments. Carlos, I hope you get to read them, because everyone is saying like, we need this, we need to rethink the way our education.
No, this is awesome. I really appreciated seeing this. I needed to see this,
It's fuel. You're also supporting our community, right? So we're supporting our founders in our community. And also, as Mutali mentioned, the importance of also having the solidarity between the Black and Brown community, but in all communities as well, but specifically in the Latina community, as we know that the Afro-Latinx is one of the fastest growing within our community. So I think we want to make sure that we also use a space for LTX Live to be able to bring those conversations and be able to raise awareness and at the end of the day, take that action. So with that said, Carlos, just want to thank you so much for sharing your journey, what you're working on, the solutions, and this is the opportunity for you all to apply. So we'll be sharing the resources, the links. Make sure you hit up Carlos, Joanna, Mutali, who are amazing. So with that said, I'm going to get ready to close. Thank you, Carlos. Let's get some love.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I know this was a mini deep dive into just the not only the history of AI, but also looking to help us reimagine what it could be, especially when we think about the Latina innovation and that lens that our specific culture can bring and really help shape. And as you heard from some of the data points I shared, especially our community in non-English languages, right? In Spanish and different indigenous languages as well. This is the opportunity for us to be part of this and shape it. So then that way we get to take the benefits as well, but also be able to protect and empower our communities. So I just want to say thank you to you all for joining us. Thank you to DJ Moonrock who kicked us off, to Joanna, to Mutali and Carlos. And I'm a servant of you all. I am here to help you all be able to get connected. And I do this from a place of love. And that's why we created LTX Connect, to really just to be a part where we all can have these more nuanced conversations that maybe we don't get to have in other spaces. So you may be all wondering what's next. Well, what's next starts here, because that's what we do here at LTX Connect, where this is really the kickoff of an AI webinar series. So we're going to continue to do these series as we get into the new year. So please stay tuned as we'll be going in and doing deeper dives into what's the intersection of AI, Latinx community, and health, as an example, in finance, in travel, in tourism, in media. And so there's a lot of different opportunities. So we'll be able to get into the weeds. We'll bring additional experts, additional community members. And most importantly, we want to be able to have you continue to come. Bring a friend that didn't get to come. Bring a family member. Please share this out. This is going to take all of us. And you are here and you did the work. So I just want to thank you so much. And with that said, we'll see you next time. And feel free to please send us any feedback. There's additional topics, domains, things that you want to share. Feel free to do that with us. So we'll be in touch and share the love. And thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.